Greetings, Dr. Wilson, classmates. As you know, my name is Alex Escobar, and I will be doing a presentation on my leadership interview with a coworker who happens to be my supervisor, Lieutenant Tim Shinham. And I've been working with him for approximately a little over a year, and he is what we call in law enforcement a 960 lieutenant, which means he is retired and he can only work 960 hours a year, no more than that. And it's up to each organization if they want to renew the contract at the end. The reason why I chose Tim over many of my other supervisors and ones I've had in the past is because Tim, by far, is one of the best supervisors I've had in many years. He is the ideal supervisor. He has great social skills. He knows how to manage people, understands people, is fair, nice, and just has a great way of making you understand what he wants you to do. In the process of my interview, I learned a lot, and I hope that from this interview presentation, you can also learn some things about yourself and maybe apply some of the things Tim and I talked about, which I think is very important. So in this presentation, I'm going to tell you a little bit about Tim's background, what makes Tim as a person aside from law enforcement and leadership stuff. Then I'll get into his professional career and tell you a little bit about his experience in law enforcement. And then at the end, I'll just kind of present some facts about leadership styles, even some challenges Tim has encountered in his lifetime and how he overcame them, and what made him ultimately the person he is today, and some recommendations that he made to me and suggestions, which I found very educational, and I appreciated his delivery on that to me because it was awesome, especially as a supervisor. I never had that, so it was a good thing. So in starting, let me tell you, Tim is a 55-year-old man. He's originally from South Dakota, lived out of California for a few years up to the age of 10, Minnesota, Michigan. Eventually, his family settled in California, and he settled in Southern California in the Orange County area, which caters primarily mostly to middle class, upper class people. Tim, as a kid, enjoyed everything about police work, and similar to many of us in this profession, and he knew right from the beginning that's what he wanted to do. Tim, as a young man, worked at a restaurant as a busboy, waiter, and a cook. At the age of 22, he entered law enforcement. At the time, he also met his now present wife, which I may say he's been married for 30 years and successfully married for 30 years, no hiccups, which is awesome. He has strong family values and morals. He's of Christian faith. His education, he obtained his bachelor's from Vanguard University during his law enforcement career. Of course, he had started college prior to law enforcement, but like many of us, we take a break once we start our careers because of the demand and the financial stability and all these other things that just come up. So he does have 4 children. Unfortunately, one of his children died 3-4 years ago at the age of 18, and ultimately that led to his early retirement, and I'll get into that a little bit later. Tim enjoys working out. He's fit. If you look at Tim, he's just a textbook image of what a supervisor should be. I mean, he's always dressed, professionally, nice and crisp uniform. He's clean shaven. Even his hair is split perfectly down the middle, and he has that nice little line. There's no imperfections on the guy. He eats healthy. He loves to just be organized. He's OCD in the sense where everything's lined up and to perfection almost. Even his mannerisms when he speaks to us, he's just very patient when he speaks, and he thinks about what he says, and his presentation is even textbook, to say the least. So in beginning to enter his law enforcement career, Tim had a lot of success, and Tim, of course, started like all of us do in the patrol aspect of it, pushing a black and white, as we call it. And he, after about a year or two, he moved up to a canine officer. He worked at the gang unit. He worked as a field training officer, as a narcotics detective, and as a general detective, and eventually working robbery and homicide, which is where you want to go as a detective. Um, and that was just as a regular officer, not any supervisory position. At the early age, in his 30s, about 32, he first promoted to sergeant, and then ultimately promoting to lieutenant in his early 40s. As a lieutenant, he enjoys working as an administrator and loves working the internal affairs aspect of law enforcement. He believes that he needs to weed out the bad apples and exonerate those that are innocent and wrongly accused. And so far to our agency, he's been doing a great job. Um, like I previously mentioned, his daughter passed away at the age of 18, and right about his 50th birthday, and resulting in his retirement. At the time, he was testing for captain, and he had a long-term goal of being a chief of police at his organization. Things didn't work out for him in that aspect of it, but fortunately, because of his family values and morals and support, he was able to get through the difficult time. Although he's not 100% yet, and I think he never will. He continues to battle his way, and one of his decisions was to return to law enforcement, and my organization was the first one that he returned to after this tragedy. And he's been doing a great job, and he seems to be coming along great in a sense. And transitioning over to his leadership style and who Tim is, leadership, in reference to leadership, Tim believes that servant leadership is the way to go. You have to guide and mentor people at all levels, and you always have to do the right thing, and you always have to have a good heart and make decisions in the best interest of all parties involved. Even as a lieutenant, since he's been with us, he continuously gives us advice and tries to guide us and mentor us and teach us the supervisory things that we need to know. Towards the end of the interview, I asked him what makes him click, and he says, I just love law enforcement. I love what I do. I love people. I love helping people, and on both sides of it, at the organization and out in public. And I found that to be a very nice thing he said. Tim tends to have some imperfections like everybody else. I have my weaknesses. He has his weaknesses. One of his major weaknesses is just being impatient. And he hears it from his wife. He hears it from his friends, and he acknowledges it. And that's something that he's actively working on, which I found quite odd, because he seems like the most patient man in the world. Maybe at least at work he is, but at home or wherever else, he's probably not showing it too much, which I can understand. Tim has some regrets. He doesn't consider his daughter's death a failure, but through the grieving process at one point he did. But he understands, every child is different, and even though you raise them all in the same house, they all make their own decisions, and they've already decided, things that they're going to do. And that was one of his biggest things to overcome in life. Regrets in his profession, he has none. He's lived a textbook career in law enforcement. He understands that things happen in personal life and career, and sometimes our careers are cut short. So now he's in a position where he wants to return to law enforcement, either in a full-time capacity as with a contract. He can come back as a chief of police or a commander, or he wants to stay on the 960 position, working specifically administration or internal affairs. Tim loves to write, so he also mentioned that he loves to write articles. He's written a couple of articles in Law and Order, which I'm going to track down and read, and he does write very well. So my experience in my interview with Tim was very educational. He taught me a lot of things, and he also provided some guidance and suggestions, and I'm going to tell you, my audience, and hopefully maybe you would apply it, maybe not, but I just want to throw it out there. And I agree with all the things that he said. And the first thing he said is, don't take life too serious. Have fun. Go out there, have fun, and do what you're supposed to do. Work, but have fun. Next thing he said is separate yourself from your profession and your personal life, because that tends to add years to your life. The next thing he said, well, communicate well. Communicate well with people at work and at home. That's why he's been successful in both aspects of it. He's been married for 30 years. He's had a career in law enforcement for 30 years, and that proves it, that, you know, what he's saying is correct. More importantly, he said, know people and understand people, and know what makes them click, and adjust your leadership style to each individual person, and be flexible. But more importantly, always do the right thing and have fun while you're doing things. And I found his advice to be on track with what I believe, and I will definitely apply it, and I will be successful, and I hope to be as successful or more successful than he is. I'm a very competitive person, so that's what I do. But I really enjoyed the interview and the assignment. Thank you for your time, and I hope some of my information in my presentation you will apply, and, you know, hopefully you learn something from it just as much as I did. Thank you, and good day.